Hey everyone, I'm Vladimir Dutit. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. Check out these monitors behind me. These are stories and news reports coming in to all of our stations and affiliates across the country. If it's happening out there, it's coming to you live right here, including these top stories. Another American town in mourning after a mass shooting at a high school. What we're learning about the 14-year-old suspect in Georgia who was known and previously interviewed by police. This morning, former President Donald Trump is being rearraigned in his election interference case. We're going to take you to the courthouse as the proceedings begin. And Hunter Biden's federal tax case begins in Los Angeles, what we can expect when the president's son returns to the courtroom. This is CBS News 24/7. All right, we're going to have a lot more on that horrific shooting in Georgia in just a moment, but we want to begin this hour in Washington, where Donald Trump's defense team is in a D.C. court right now for a rearraignment in the former president's election interference case. This stems from a superseding indictment filed by special counsel Jack Smith. Now, Trump has waived his right to appear in person. So, CBS News Justice reporter Robert Laguerre joins me inside the courthouse, but on the phone to explain what's going on. Robert, explain to the audience what's happening today and how these charges differ from the original indictment.
Hey, yeah, Vlad, thanks for having me, and good morning. So, right in D.C. federal court, attorneys for special counsel Jack Smith and representing former President Donald Trump are set to begin the proceedings any moment now before Judge Tanya Chutkan. This is the first hearing in the D.C. 2020 election-related federal case against the former president since the Supreme Court issued its landmark immunity ruling in July. And so now we're expecting to get more information from Judge Chutkan about what is going to happen next, how she's going to interpret that Supreme Court ruling, any trial briefing schedules that she's going to put forward. And as you mentioned, the former president has waived his appearance and has authorized his attorneys to enter a not guilty plea on his behalf.
All right, Robert, thanks so much for that debrief. Once we get some more information or we hear any more information coming from you or from the courthouse, we'll bring our viewers back to this story. Thanks so much. Okay, now to our top story. We're learning new details about yesterday's mass shooting at a Georgia high school. Investigators say the suspect is a 14-year-old student, and he was armed with an AR-style weapon. He's charged with murder and will be tried as an adult. 4 people were killed and 9 others were injured in this shooting. The victims identified as 2 14-year-old students. You can see them on your screen along with 2 teachers. CBS News' Dave Malkoff is on the ground in Georgia and joins us now to talk about this. Dave, the school year has barely started. I mean, it was day one, first day of school in many states, in many municipalities across the country, and already this consistent American tragedy that we face almost practically on a regular systemic basis is happening again. What are we learning about this particular shooting?
Vlad, this is one that will go in the record books for right now. This is actually now standing as the worst act of violence in Georgia state history, as this 14-year-old suspect, according to police, walked into the school, started shooting, lots of people injured, 9 people with gunshot wounds. 4 people are dead. We have 2 students and 2 math teachers. Both of those students were 14 years old, the same age as the shooter, Vlad. But we are also learning that there was actually police, law enforcement contact with this shooter, or the suspected shooter. There was law enforcement contact with the suspected shooter and his father as recently as last year, where Jackson County Sheriff's detectives actually went to the house. They talked to the suspect, the boy who's the suspect right now, and his father, and they didn't find any kind of probable cause that would lead to an arrest. But I was just looking over that incident report right here. I just got it to my phone just moments ago, and they said this stems from what was chatter on a Discord server. It was a video game Discord server where they were getting anonymous tips about somebody talking about a possible upcoming school shooting. They talked to the family in that house, but again, they did not have any probable cause to make an arrest at that time. But the GBI and the FBI and the Sheriff's Department, they are all looking into that incident. And that's a major part of the investigation, Vlad. Also, how did the gun get into the school?
Right. So, Dave, it's such an important point that you're making there about the police interviewing the suspect, who was then at the time only 13 years old, along with his father. And we hear time and time again from politicians, including the Republican congressman who represents that district that you're in right now, Mike Collins, that we don't need the kind of sensible gun legislation that many are calling for, that the American people and CBS News polling have consistently shown see this as a major problem in American society. We hear that the key is to flag people before they commit these acts. We hear and we see from politicians this notion of the good guy with a gun. In fact, Mike Collins has photographed himself holding these types of weapons in his social media feed. And yet here we are again. The only thing that we can sort of say about this is a very different reaction from the police than what we saw in Uvalde, and the fact that this school had just given out an alert device for this type of scenario. Break that down for me. I hadn't heard that.
So, you know, the IDs that we carry around to get in and out of the building, and a lot of people who are employees carry those IDs around with us. Well, they just swapped out those IDs here at the school, and you would think, what does that have to do with this situation? But these IDs are a new technology that just came in last week to this school behind me. So on the ID, it not only opens the doors and shows your picture and all that kind of stuff, but it also, in the center of that ID, if you press and hold a button, it will send out an alert that says there is an active situation going on right now, specifically in this room, in this classroom that I'm in. It will call the police, fire, paramedics. Not only that, but it will send out an audible alert over the announcement system inside the school and tell everybody that there's a lockdown situation happening right now. Red lights will go on and flash off. But there will also be every single monitor everywhere in the school will print out that message on the monitor, and you will be able to see, even if you can't hear or you are visually impaired, you will be able to know that there is a lockdown situation happening right now. So in this case, different than Uvalde, nobody had to call the police. Nobody had to make a 911 call to get the police coming. They also had the school resource officers there, and we're told that those were the officers who made this arrest.
Yeah, props to those school resource officers who, as you indicated, Dave, engaged the suspect immediately. Of course, police on the scene. But there was nothing more heartbreaking to me in seeing and reading some of the text messages from students to their family members while this was all transpiring. And sadly, as we indicated, this is something that is incredibly common now in this country, and it often feels as if people are sort of immune to the reporting whenever these horrific incidences happen. Dave Malikoff on the ground for us. Dave, thank you very much for your reporting. We'll check it back in with you later because you are continuing to develop and report on this story because the investigation is ongoing. We appreciate it. All right, let's turn to some international news now. In Germany, where police fatally shot a man with a gun near the Israeli consulate in Munich this morning, Israel's president is describing the incident as a, quote, terror attack. And CBS News reporter Anna Norskiewicz has been following this story for us from Berlin and is joining me now to talk about it. So, Anna, what more are you learning about this morning's incident?
Good morning, Vlad. So this morning around 9 a.m. local time, Munich police engaged in a shootout with an 18-year-old gunman near the Israeli consulate close to downtown Munich. The attacker, an Austrian national with Bosnian roots, was known to authorities as an Islamist with ties to extremist groups, and he had previously been investigated in Austria for allegedly being part of a terrorist organization, although that case was later dropped. And the suspect, armed with an old long gun fitted with a bayonet, fired at officers this morning who responded by shooting him dead. And the police believe that the suspect may have been planning an attack on the consulate, coinciding with the 52nd anniversary of the 1972 Munich Olympics massacre, which left 11 Israeli athletes dead who were killed by Palestinian militants. And the consulate was closed today for memorial service, and luckily no one else was harmed in the incident.
So, Anna, quickly, do we know if the police are considering this a lone wolf attack, or is there still a connection to a nexus of terror that they need to investigate?
So currently, Munich police have stated that it is one individual attacker, and there's also no threats linked to the shooting. You may know that, or you may not forget that Germany is constantly on high alert. And today, also about 500 officers were quickly deployed to secure the area and the area surrounding the consulate. And right now, it is not clear. It is not definitely clear if this was a terror attack. And because the links to Islamist extremist group was not confirmed so far. But there's no indication of other suspects involved in the attack. And of course, the area remains under heavy police presence.
All right, Anna, thank you so much for your reporting. We appreciate it. Staying overseas now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is vowing to maintain control over Gaza's border with Egypt. The future of the Philadelphia corridor is a major sticking point in ceasefire negotiations as thousands continue protesting in Tel Aviv. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer has more.
Prime Minister Netanyahu is under fire specifically for insisting that a full military withdrawal from Gaza is impossible. Last night, there were once again protests across Israel. The message for the Prime Minister: do whatever it takes to get a deal done now. But in a press conference yesterday, Netanyahu doubled down on a key issue holding up the deal. He explained to foreign reporters with a short geography lesson that he cannot withdraw troops from the so-called Philadelphia corridor. That's Israel's southern border with Egypt. He insists the military has to stay to prevent Hamas from smuggling in weapons or even smuggling out hostages. But for Hamas, that's just a non-starter. It insists on a full Israeli withdrawal. Meanwhile, Hamas is still holding 97 people who were taken on the 7th of October. 64 of them are believed to be alive. And that deal can't come soon enough, not only for them, but for millions of Palestinians. Overnight, there was yet another Israeli airstrike on Gaza, which killed at least 4 men. Israel says the target was a Hamas command and control center, but there were casualties, civilian ones, that included 2 children. There is a trickle of good news from Gaza, though. This morning, vaccinations is well underway for 640,000 children believed to be at risk of polio. One baby boy has already caught the disease there, the very first case in the Gaza Strip in 25 years. Vlad?
All right, Elizabeth, thank you so much for your reporting. The relentless heat in the western half of the country is showing no sign of letting up. Orange and Los Angeles counties are expected to hit the triple digits over the next few days, and it's looking very, very orange out there. CBS News Los Angeles reporter Tina Patel is in Woodlands Hills. Tina, I'm just looking at the map, and I see orange appear in the teleprompter, and, you know, the brain, it's early on a Tuesday, or on a Wednesday now. See, this is what I'm talking about. So how are people in Southern California preparing for this?
You know, unfortunately, we've had a couple days of practice, so we kind of know what to expect today and the next few days. You know, where we are, the sun just came up within the last hour, and if you look at the temperature across the street, it's already nearing 80 degrees. We're in a valley, so probably this is going to be one of the hot spots. Temperatures will probably rise here in 20 to 30 degrees just in the next few hours. And, you know, normally in Southern California, if we're inland, we can kind of go to the coast, get a little bit relief. But the problem with this heat wave is it's actually going to be warm everywhere. Some of our beach communities are expected to hit 90 today, so there's not going to be a lot of relief there either. And, you know, we talk about the heat. It's not just uncomfortable. It can actually be dangerous. Schools throughout Southern California, we've been hearing that they've been having to cancel some of their sports games. The practices have been pushed back to later hours to try to keep student athletes safe, because there are actually new rules here in California now about when it's safe for students to be practicing or playing in this kind of weather. They just don't want to take any chances because we know just how dangerous it can be.
Indeed. By the way, Tina, did you know that today is actually Thursday?
I didn't want to correct you, but yes, this week here in California, it's about like it's just gone on and on because every day is just really hot. We have no idea what's going on anymore.
Exactly. That's the excuse I'm going with. Tina Patel reporting from Los Angeles for us this morning. Thank you, Tina. All right, let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Tammy Sousa with the first look at the national forecast. Tammy, I know you know that today is Thursday.
I wish it was Friday. I can tell you that much. I'm sure we all do. You know, it's not going to be any cooler for them, but you know what? It's going to start to get cool for the eastern half of the country, so that we get a little bit of a break. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on temperature-wise. Now, all we have done is talk about the southern plains, just on and on and on about the heat there. But guess what? We are not looking at the big heat being in the southern plains. This time, this is going to be in the desert southwest and the west coast. Right now, some places along the west coast waking up in the 50s and 60s, but things are going to climb pretty quickly, and it is going to be unpleasantly hot, in fact, dangerously hot. Let's go ahead and take a look at where we're going to be going numbers-wise today. We are going to be looking at triple digits across a lot of the desert southwest. Now, that's what we were just talking about. That's what we just heard her say. Look at these shades of orange and pink. So today, it could be about 113 in Phoenix, and they have been on a streak of triple digits now for an amazing length of time. We're looking at possibly 101 in Los Angeles. That would be inland. That would not be down by the water. And even once you get up into Reno and San Jose, you're looking at temperatures that are going to be in the 90s. If we move across the nation, we are going to be looking at temperatures that are a little bit cooler, but we will talk more about this and what to expect and the heat danger, and we'll talk more about the flooding along the Gulf Coast when I come back in just a couple of minutes. Vlad?
All right, Tammy, we'll check back in with you in just a couple of minutes. Thank you very much. British prosecutors are dropping criminal charges against Harvey Weinstein. We'll tell you why just ahead. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Okay, we want to bring you back to Washington, where former President Donald Trump has officially entered a plea in the election interference case that he is facing. Not guilty, says the former president. A reminder that this stems from a superseding indictment filed by special counsel Jack Smith. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane is joining me now on the phone from outside the courtroom. Scott, what are you learning?
And nothing surprising here. They forecast this in the briefings and the filings before today's procedures. But through his attorneys, Donald Trump has entered formally not guilty pleas to those same 4 federal felony counts he faces for election subversion. It's the 4 counts from that superseding indictment that was filed last week by the special counsel. It has now been formally pled as a not guilty plea through his defense lawyers here today.
All right, Scott, I know that this is still sort of a developing story. We'll check back in with you a little bit later. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it. All right, let's talk about the current president's son. That's Hunter Biden. The jury selection in his federal tax evasion case is set to begin today in Los Angeles. The president's son has pleaded not guilty to charges of failing to pay $1.4 million in taxes. He faces up to 17 years in prison if convicted. CBS News Los Angeles reporter Cara Finstrom is following the latest on this for us and has the very latest. She's joining us now to talk about it. So Cara, what are we expecting out of today's selection? And can you give us a timeline for this trial?
Yeah, we're thinking about 2 weeks for the trial. The jury selection, that's expected to get underway this morning, may take about a day. There'll be about 100 potential jurors questioned here at the federal courthouse, expected to be questioned about everything from their political beliefs to how they feel about addiction. The president's son, he is charged, as you mentioned, with failing to pay at least $1.4 million in federal taxes. The prosecutors are saying he was living an extravagant lifestyle at the time. He is facing 9 counts, and in addition to those 17 years in prison, he could end up paying a fine of up to $750,000, again, if he's convicted and if that's what's found. The 54-year-old has pleaded not guilty. He says he belatedly paid all his tax debts in 2019 when he became sober following struggles with alcoholism and drug abuse. His attorney maintains the charges resulted from political pressure. Now, what they're really doing, prosecutors here, they are chronicling the money he made. They say more than $7 million over 3 years, and they allege that he spent nearly $5 million of it on things like drugs and escorts, leading a lavish life from a Malibu mansion. Hunter Biden, convicted, as you know, a couple weeks ago on gun charges, has yet to be sentenced on that in Delaware. Both of these cases stem from an investigation that was led by special counsel David Weiss. Now, there are a lot of questions out there about whether Hunter Biden could get a pardon from his father. The president has said he would not grant one, but he hasn't commented since announcing he won't be running for re-election. Back out here live, want to give you a look at all the media that is out here, and that's because it is expected but not confirmed that Hunter Biden will be here today. That is generally required during jury selection, and we'll be out here as everything gets underway. Again, jury selection today, about 1 day, and then a 2-week trial is what's expected.
All right, Cara, we know obviously if the president's son does show up, you'll be there, and we'll probably bring those pictures live to our viewers right here at CBS News 24/7. We appreciate you. Thank you. All right, British prosecutors have dropped the indecent assault charges against Harvey Weinstein, saying they decided not to pursue the case because there is, quote, no longer a realistic prospect of conviction. The former Hollywood mogul was facing charges in connection to an alleged assault that happened in London back in 1996. He's currently in custody in New York as he waits for a retrial on rape and sexual assault charges in Manhattan. After that trial, Weinstein is set to begin a 16-year sentence in California for a rape conviction in a separate trial. All right, it's a driver's worst nightmare. Water leaking into one of the underground tunnels connecting two of New York's boroughs. We'll tell you how it happened next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the stories that we are following for you this morning. The 17-year-old suspect who shot 49ers rookie Ricky Pearsall appeared in court for the first time. His lawyers say the boy is very sorry it happened. Prosecutors are deciding whether he should be tried as an adult. He's charged with attempted murder after shooting Pearsall in the chest during an attempted robbery. Pearsall was released from the hospital the next day. Moving east, opening statements will begin today in the trial for the man accused of killing 10 people at a Colorado supermarket. Ahmed Aliwi is facing 10 counts of murder and 38 counts of attempted murder in the shooting at a King superstore 3 years ago. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia after the shooting and has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. The trial is expected to focus on whether or not he was legally sane at the time of the attack. And a big scare for some New York City commuters. A major tunnel is reopened for traffic now after a contractor accidentally drilled a hole in the roof of one of the tubes. It sounds remarkable to even be saying it. Yes, a contractor, somebody who's supposedly professional, accidentally drilled a hole in this tube. The Queens Midtown Tunnel was shut down yesterday when drivers say all of a sudden water started flowing into the tunnel. Officials managed to temporarily plug the leak of a tunnel, a major tunnel in New York City. They say that they're working on a permanent plan. In the meantime, they're assuring commuters it is safe to drive through that tunnel. More than 90,000 cars go through that tunnel every single day. So, yeah, they're saying it's safe. I think if you're driving to New York City, we have great transit systems here in the city. You might want to consider. All right, now to something a little bit more serious. We're returning now to the story in Georgia, where community is in mourning after 4 people were killed and 9 others were injured in that shooting at Appalachian High School in Georgia. CBS News producer Jared Eggleston was the first on the scene for us. So, Jared, you're still there on the ground. Take us through what you saw when you got to the school.
Vlad, good morning. It was just pure chaos here on the scene yesterday. When I got here, it was just around noon, and parents were still flocking to the scene. It was about, I would say, a mile and a half radius around the school where cars were just parked, ditched along the side of the road in neighborhoods, just anywhere they could leave them as parents fled closer to the school to try to be reunited with their loved ones. But then once they got to this school, it was really like an hour or so, and what for them probably felt like many hours from what many of them described to me, before they were actually reunited with their students. And the students were taken to a football field just to my right here, where the school was counting the students and making sure that they had accounted for them. But as the parents were anxiously awaiting outside the fence to be reunited with their students and to make sure that they were okay yesterday.
Well, so Jared, as you know, the school is closed for the rest of the week. I saw interviews that Ardrika Duncan did on the ground with some of the family members of the children of the schools. Some of them are saying that they're not even sending their kids back to the school ever, that some of them are going to homeschool their children. What are you hearing about how the community is coping since this happened?
Yeah, Vlad, the community it's a small community. It's a growing community, but it's still very small and very tight-knit. I mean, even some of these families are saying they're not letting their kids come back to this school because they just don't trust it. But others are really rallying around the community and making sure that everyone is okay. The local Starbucks is closed today as a result of it, posting on Facebook one of their employees saying that the Starbucks is closed because so many of the people affected by yesterday's events work there, and they want to give them time to grieve. That's just one of the many examples of businesses and people in this community here banding together during just the unthinkable tragedy.
So, Jared, the question that I keep hearing from people who are following the story, who are reaching out to me on social media, is how did this 14-year-old kid get access to this weapon? We know that obviously it's been reported that he was interviewed along with his father a year earlier when he was just 13 years old about threats that he allegedly had made online. So the question is, how did he get this weapon and how did he get it into the school?
Vlad, I think that is the million-dollar question right now that investigators are looking into. We know that this school did have security measures in place. Teachers had panic buttons so that they could alert authorities of an incident, and that is exactly how the sheriff's office was even notified about this incident, and same with the school resource officers. But right now, authorities haven't released information just how he had access to the gun, but we do know the family did have them in the house. But that is the thing that they are definitely working on today. And of course, we are going to continue to ask those questions and move forward with the story.
All right, Jared Eggleston, first on the ground for CBS News yesterday in the wake of that horrific shooting. Thank you, Jared. Appreciate it. All right, the school shooting was also a topic on the campaign trail, as you might imagine. Yesterday, Vice President Kamala Harris, who supports stronger gun control measures, said that it was outrageous that parents have to send their kids to school not knowing if they will come home alive. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump called the shooting a tragedy on his Truth Social platform. CBS News campaign reporter Shauna Mizell is in Erie, Pennsylvania, following the Harris-Walz campaign movements today. Shauna, we know that Harris is returning to Pittsburgh today ahead of the presidential debate. Can we expect any major statements or campaigning from her on this issue while she's there? Because I know that the economy is still top of mind for a lot of voters, so they quickly pivoted. Both she and Donald Trump quickly pivoted after offering a statement on the shooting to issues surrounding the economy.
Vlad, good morning. That's right. Harris was actually in New Hampshire yesterday unveiling a new leg of her economic plan when the shooting happened. In fact, many attendees at the event didn't have phone service because of the amount of people there. And so when Harris actually came out and addressed the shooting, that was the first time that those attendees had learned of what happened in Georgia. But she's headed to Pittsburgh today. And when she gets to Pittsburgh, Harris is expected to hunker down. We're not expecting her to do any major campaign rallies. She's going to be doing debate prep. As we know, the presidential debate between her and Donald Trump is going to take place here in Pennsylvania. But we could see her do some informal stops, like stopping at a coffee shop or something like that. Vlad?
And you're also following Governor Walz during his stop in Erie. How are we seeing the campaign utilize him on the trail? What has been his primary message?
Governor Walz has really been hitting those crucial battleground states like North Carolina, where he was last week. He's been in Boston, which really isn't a battleground state, but he was there to address union workers. As a teacher, a football coach, he has been used to address unions and to appeal to those Midwestern and maybe even independent voters. So we'll see him here today in Pennsylvania, a crucial battleground state where we also saw former President Donald Trump participating in a Fox News town hall here yesterday.
All right, Shauna Mizell reporting from Erie, Pennsylvania this morning. Thank you, Shauna. All right, sticking with the politics of it all in the U.S., former President Donald Trump took aim at his opponent and slammed ABC News, all during a pre-taped town hall that aired on Fox News. Listen.
If she gets in, I think we will have a depression, 1929 style depression. That's what I think will happen to our country. They are the most dishonest network, the meanest, the nastiest, but that was what I was presented with. I think a lot of people are going to be watching to see how nasty they are, how unfair they are.
I want to bring in CBS News campaign reporter Zach Hudak, who's tracking the story for us. So Trump whining that ABC is mean to him. Zach, he's in New York today for what's being called a major economic speech. But as you can see, and as you've heard over the last several interviews that he has done, the president continues to mostly talk about his grievances and only occasionally about his plans for his presidency should he be reelected. So what are you hearing about this plan for the economy?
Vlad, it's good to see you. We are hearing that the former president is going to propose that a government efficiency commission be created. That's something that Elon Musk, the billionaire, recommended. And he wants to basically do an audit of all of the elements of government and figure out where there is fraud, where there are improper payments, and where there is waste. This is an interesting proposal, though, because in some ways it's atypical for a Republican to propose creating more government jobs. Even though the goal of this commission would be to be more efficient, he is talking about creating a government entity that doesn't currently exist and would involve creating more government jobs and theoretically, from the get-go, upping government costs a little bit. So that's actually sort of something that he might face some resistance from in Congress from Republicans.
So, Zach, as you know, the former president called the shooting in Georgia tragic. He called the shooter a sick and deranged monster. Has the campaign outlined a plan to address gun violence in this country if he's reelected? He is a staunch supporter of the National Rifle Association, as you know, and it doesn't seem as if he's ever had a plan for addressing the gun violence that people in this country face every day, but perhaps it's changing.
Vlad, it has not changed yet. We do know that in 2017, after that horrible shooting in Las Vegas, former President Trump at the time did spearhead a bump stock ban, and that did get through. However, earlier this year, the Supreme Court overturned that. So his one, if you want to call it a major victory on gun reform, has sort of already been undone. Now, looking forward, I don't think we can expect him to propose Biden-style gun regulations. In fact, as you mentioned, he is a close ally of the NRA. He was endorsed by them earlier this year. And when that happened, he promised to roll back Biden-era regulations and actually to fire the director of the ATF. So I think what we expect in the coming days actually is him to double down on law and order and things like that. He's going to be speaking to the Fraternal Order of Police in Charlotte, North Carolina tomorrow. I think it's not unreasonable for us to expect him to call on police to help make things safer, but I think it is not on the horizon that he's going to suggest any kind of increased regulations for guns in this country.
Yeah, well, the police, as you know, Zach, did interview the suspect in yesterday's shooting a year before he carried out his heinous act, and they were unable to, or at least were not able at that time, to do something that would have prevented what happened yesterday. All right, Zach, appreciate your reporting, my friend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lad.
All right, parts of the South are drying out today from heavy rain. Talking heavy rain that brought flooding to some areas. This is a daycare in Winter Park, Florida. Look at that rain. And it wasn't only the kids that were impacted. If you look really closely at the ball floating on the floor, you can see a little frog. It's going for a ride, but it's an amphibian, so even if it fell off, we'd imagine it knows how to swim, but No one wants to see a daycare flooded. At least I don't. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Tammy Souza with another look at the national forecast. Tammy.
Yeah, that is something nobody wants to see, although the frog cute as can be. And yes, they like to have more water, not drought. So let's talk about first what's going on. We do have some of that flooding that is still ongoing, and it's because we have a frontal boundary that is stretched across the Gulf Coast. You can actually see it here, and it is cloud cover all the way from southern Texas through Florida, even into southern Georgia. And that's the problem, is we're going to continue to be watching this boundary just stuck there and creating this flooding rain. Right here, you can actually see all of that boundary and the rain. This is ongoing right now. We have a little area of low pressure, too, that is dancing around, may become sort of tropical, but, you know, it's still iffy at best. But this is not moving, and that's the problem. You notice all the flooding continuing. We do have a flood watch, and we will have flash flood watches that will be issued, but the flood watch is through tomorrow evening at 7, and this could actually extend into our Saturday. Now, between now and Saturday, look at these rainfall totals that are expected. Near New Orleans and in Slidell, we're looking at 8 to 10 inches. We're looking at possibly 5 to 7 inches just off to the west of there. You get up to the north, you're looking at 2 to 4 and 4 to 6 along the Gulf Coast, and that will extend into parts of Florida. When I come back in a little bit, you know what? We'll talk about the heat again, and we'll take a big picture of the entire nation. Vlad?
All right, looking forward to that, Tammy. Thank you very much. All right, Russian President Vladimir Putin is weighing in on the U.S. presidential election. We'll tell you who he claims he would like to win. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Vice President Kamala Harris received a surprise endorsement this morning from that guy, Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin said he preferred Harris winning November's election, citing her, quote, infectious laugh as a reason. Of course, we should note U.S. intelligence believes that Russia actually prefers a Trump victory because of his views on Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine. Joining me for more on this is CBS News intelligence and national security reporter Olivia Gazis. Olivia, I mean, Vladimir Putin's a former KGB agent, as you know. The notion that we should take him at his word when he says that he wants Kamala Harris to win because of her infectious laugh, just give me a sense of what intelligence officials are telling you.
Yeah, Vlad, I think you're right to be skeptical because this seems more like patented Putin dark humor, sarcasm more than anything else. And that's in part because of, as you point out, we know that the Russian government's actions are diametrically opposed to Putin's words here. We know Kremlin-connected actors have been working to sow chaos in the U.S. election with a partial objective being to lend support to Donald Trump's campaign, which it did in 2016 and 2020. So I think that you should think of this more as a trolling, a headline-generating sort of grab more than anything being relayed in good faith. It's worth noting that Putin seems to be latching on to a criticism that the Trump campaign itself has used, characterizing Kamala Harris's laugh as a cackle. And so, again, I think this is more trolling from Putin than it is anything else.
By the way, as you know, Olivia, the Justice Department, of course, unveiled a series of actions against bad faith actors who are in support of Vladimir Putin's policies in Ukraine and all around the world in duping unwitting right-wing commentators here in the United States to spread propaganda amongst their faithful viewers, followers, listeners, what have you. So, yeah, I think you're right with your assessment there. Let's talk about what's happening with Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who's traveling to Haiti today. As you know, there's been ongoing gang violence in the country, although the country does have a new prime minister, and they do have foreign troops on the ground there to try and quell that violence. But what do we know about this trip?
Sure. And Vlad, I know that your extensive reporting in the country and on Haiti, you know that this has been a really tortured trajectory. Secretary Blinken is the highest ranking U.S. official, the first Secretary of State to visit Haiti in close to a decade. And this visit is coming at a pretty precarious time. Just hours ago, the state of emergency in Haiti was expanded to cover the entire country because of that gang violence that you noted is pretty much unrelenting. The secretary is just there for a day trip. He's meeting with the interim prime Prime Minister Gary Coney in order to discuss these lurching efforts at getting to a democratic transition, to getting to legitimate elections. And he's meeting with representatives of the multinational security force currently led by Kenya. But it's worth noting that despite some of the more optimistic notes that U.S. officials have been trying to strike, they've highlighted, for example, that now the airport is reopened, which is, a step in the right direction. Unfortunately, there's just been very little indication of progress. There's only about 400 troops from that security force actually deployed in the country, well below the 2,500 that were promised. U.S. officials have said that more are coming very, very soon, but the fact remains that a lot of the staffing and the resources just have not come through to this point. The U.S. is hoping that Blinken's visit is going to boost the international profile of this problem and hopefully elicit more contributions from other countries. But again, the fact remains that the gang violence is rampant. The administration of justice has not come through. Most prisons have been destroyed. There have been no major arrests of the gang leaders who have been fueling this violence. And so this visit is more to sort of raise the profile of the problems that remain than it is to tout solutions, as the U.S. normally uses these sorts of trips for.
All right, Olivia. And by the way, Olivia, coming up in the next segment, we're talking about the first day of school. Now, as a parent of a child who's still only in daycare, what's it like? I mean, when you send the kiddies off to school, are you popping the champagne or are you sad that the summer's over?
I am weeping in my car and on the walk to it, Vlad.
Oh
it is a very, very tough separation. It is. They're so little. They have so much to learn. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Thanks so much, Olivia. Appreciate it as always.
Thanks, Vlad.
All right, so it's that moment that many people have waited for, right? That's what it says here. We're talking about the NFL, not talking about school, but we are going to be talking about the first day of school because it's happening right here in New York City. It's today. We're going to have much more on tonight's football matchup, though, ahead. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. All right, we want to look at some of the stories our stations are covering. Here in New York City, it's the first day of class for public school kids. CBS News New York reporter Christina Fan has more.
Good morning. As nearly 1 million students across the city head back to class today, the nation's largest school district is grappling with a variety of challenges, including the rollout of new curriculums. According to recent data from the Department of Education, there was a 2.6 decrease in reading proficiency last year among kids in grades 3 through 8. But Chancellor David Banks says the decrease has nothing to do with the new phonics-based curriculum that he is currently pushing called NYC Reads. The literacy program was implemented in 15 community school districts last year and is being adopted by all districts this far. Now, other issues the school district hopes to tackle this year include a district-wide cell phone ban and, of course, recovering from COVID learning loss. Reporting from Williamsburg, Brooklyn, Christina Fan, CBS News, New York.
All right, let's talk some football. The NFL season officially kicks off tonight with a marquee matchup between the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium. Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce will face off against last year's MVP. That is Lamar Jackson. That's for the first time since last season's AFC Championship game. The Chiefs are aiming to three-peat as Super Bowl champions. What? Not gonna happen. I mean, yeah, come on. There's only 3 people in this room, but the peanut gallery agrees with me because it's never happened in the Super Bowl era. So let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Tammy Souza with the last look at the national forecast. Tammy, I got to believe you're an Eagles fan. You'll be booing for whoever is not an Eagle.
Yeah, you know what, despite the Kelce brothers thing, yeah, and the Eagles, they're going to Brazil, so we got to wait till tomorrow to see them play. But, I'm excited. I'm excited to see it kick off, and I'm excited for them to not three-peat. There you go. How about that? Let's take a look at what's going on across the nation. We have beautiful sunshine that we're dealing with in the Northeast, so perfect conditions for all the kiddies that are sending off to school and getting ready this week. We're looking at stormy conditions across the South. The Gulf Coast could see flooding conditions there. Now, it is hot, and I mean hot, in the desert Southwest and on the West Coast. And we have this lovely little cold front that's bringing in some cool air. In fact, we're going to see about a 20-degree drop in temperatures for places like Chicago, and that'll make its way all the way toward the East East Coast. Here's what we're looking at for heat. We're looking at temperatures that are going to be up to 115, where you see the shades of pink in Southern California and the desert Southwest, 105 where you see the shades of orange. And these are the rainfall totals we could see before Saturday. Some places up to 10 inches of rain along the Gulf Coast. Vlad, back to you.
All right, Tammy, thanks so much. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you tomorrow. An encore of CBS Mornings is coming up next. This is CBS News 24/7.